My dad's gold digger fiancée, along with her 2 demon kids, moved in. She demanded I move out of my room when she got pregnant, claiming she needed the space. Her smug look vanished when I informed her that I owned the house. What came next was an unforgettable spectacle, and here's how it all went down. This whole drama began around 9 years ago, when I was 12 and my mom passed away from cancer. My dad was a mess, and no one knew what to do with me. Fortunately, my grandparents lived just outside the city on a nice piece of land with a house that was a bit run down, but still had great structure. After my mom died, it made sense for me to stay with them. My dad would visit on weekends, holidays, or whenever. The house is a solid 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom place with a large kitchen, situated on about 3 acres of land that backs up to a forest. However, this is when my dad's true nature began to show. Even as a kid, I could see his obsession with control. Everything had to be done his way, on his timeline, with his approval. On weekends, he'd show up and immediately start rearranging things, giving my grandpa instructions on how to maintain the property, and making decisions about my life without consulting anyone. My best friend Ian lived about 10 minutes away, so I wasn't completely isolated. He's been my ride or die since we were building forts in those woods. But here's the most interesting part. My mom was an only child, and so am I. When my grandparents' health began to fail a few years back, guess who was the sole heir in their will? That's right. I inherited the whole damn thing when my grandpa died. The house, the land, his old pickup truck that somehow still runs, and a significant amount of money they'd saved up. My dad had used my mom's life insurance to make some renovations over the years, but he acted like it was a huge favor to me, as if I should be grateful he was investing in my property. I found out about the inheritance when the lawyer called me after my grandpa's funeral. My dad was standing right there. The look on his face when he realized I owned the house we all lived in wasn't embarrassment or guilt, but irritation, as if my existence had just complicated his life. Ian, who was there helping me sort through my grandpa's tools, saw my dad walk away and simply said, "So you own the house now? Damn, Thanksgiving is going to be awkward." But we never talked about it. My dad just pretended it never happened and continued to act like the man of the house, controlling everything from the TV to when I could have friends over. About 2 years after my mom died, my dad started dating again. Nothing serious at first, just coffee and dinner dates. Then, about 6 months ago, he dropped a bombshell. He had a serious girlfriend. Her name was Jennifer, a 30-year-old preschool teacher with 2 kids under 10 and enough emotional baggage to fill a therapist's office. Jennifer had the whole young professional mom vibe, driving a spotless white SUV, wearing athleisure, and sharing her opinions on organic food whether you asked or not. Her kids, Hunter and Paisley, because of course they had names like that, were these perfectly groomed little sociopaths. The first time my dad brought her over, she walked around taking mental notes, muttering things like, "This needs work and that needs replacing." I caught her opening cabinets and checking expiration dates. "Your grandmother had such interesting taste," she said, running her finger along the vintage wallpaper. "It's so authentic, very lived in." The way she said lived in made it sound like a polite way of calling the place trashy, but my dad just ate it up. "Jennifer has such great design sense," he said, as if she'd just complimented the Sistine Chapel. "She has so many ideas for improvements." Her kids were even worse. Hunter, who was about 8, touched everything he wasn't supposed to while maintaining perfect eye contact. Paisley, the 6-year-old, knocked over my grandma's favorite plant and then looked at me as if it were my fault for putting it where she could reach it. When I brought it up, Jennifer just laughed. "Oh, kids will be kids. They're just so excited to be in such a big house. They're not used to having so much space." Later that evening, Ian came by and caught the end of their visit. After they left, he looked at the living room, where Jennifer had moved some throw pillows. "Well, she seems fun," he said. "Nothing says, I'm not planning to redecorate your entire life, like rearranging the furniture on the first visit." My dad was completely smitten, spending more on dates, buying new clothes, and getting his teeth whitened, classic midlife crisis stuff. But instead of a motorcycle, he'd found a ready-made family that gave him validation. Jennifer played her role perfectly, asking his opinion on everything and deferring to his wisdom, making him feel like the big, strong provider. Within 3 months, she had practically moved in. Her things started appearing in my dad's bathroom, and her car was in the driveway more than at her apartment. Hunter and Paisley had claimed the guest room as if they planned to stay forever. And the kids, Jesus, they transformed from perfectly behaved angels into absolute demons the second they got comfortable. Hunter would accidentally break my things and then act confused when I got mad. Paisley would go into my room when I wasn't home, mess with my stuff, and deny everything when I confronted her. When I complained, Jennifer would give me a wounded look and suggest I wasn't used to having kids around. My dad, of course, always took her side, telling me to cut them some slack. By the 4th month, she wasn't even pretending anymore. She went from grateful guest to woman of the house, faster than you can say gold digger. It began with small things, rearranging the living room while my dad was at work, then acting like it had always been that way. Replacing my grandma's dish towels with her own organic cotton ones, throwing out food she didn't approve of, and replacing it with expensive organic alternatives. But the real power move was how she began to treat me like a deadbeat nephew who had overstayed his welcome. She started complaining about my music being too loud after 9 p.m. because the children need their sleep, and some of us have real jobs in the morning. Like being a college student in my own house was less legitimate than teaching finger painting. My dad just nodded along, thinking it was perfectly reasonable. She's right, son. We need to be considerate of everyone living here. Her kids got worse, too. Hunter figured out which buttons to push and started pushing them. He'd wait until I was on the phone or in the middle of something important and then start making noise or asking stupid questions. One day, he asked why I didn't have a girlfriend. When I told him to mind his own business, he said his mom told him it was because I lived with my dad like a loser. Your mom says a lot of things, I told him. Most of them are bullshit. I'm telling. He yelled and ran to find Jennifer. 5 minutes later, my dad was in my room lecturing me about being a good role model and watching my language around the children. Jennifer stood behind him with an expression that would have won an Oscar, explaining how inappropriate it was for me to talk to Hunter like that. My dad's face went red, and he demanded I apologize. For what? I asked. For being disrespectful to Jennifer and setting a bad example, he said. I refused to apologize. That's when Jennifer's mask slipped for a second. She commented that maybe it was time I started acting like part of the family instead of some entitled teenager. That night, I found Paisley in my room again, this time going through my desk drawers. What are you doing? I asked. She looked up at me with those dead shark eyes kids get when they're plotting something. Mommy said I could look for paper for my art project. Mommy doesn't give permission for my room. Get out. You're mean, she said, but she was smiling. Mommy says you're just jealous because Daddy loves us more now. I escorted her out and locked my door. The kid was repeating what her mother had said about me. Jennifer was literally poisoning her kids against me. The final straw came that Sunday when I got home from Ian's place to find Jennifer in my room, rearranging things. My desk was in a new corner, my posters were taken down, and my bed had different sheets. What the hell are you doing? I asked when I found her in the hallway. Language, she said automatically. I was just organizing things a bit. Your room was affecting the energy of the whole house. You went into my room without permission and moved my stuff around. I knocked, but you weren't home. I thought you wouldn't mind. It looks so much better now, don't you think? My dad came out of the kitchen as if he'd been waiting for this. What's the problem? She was just trying to help. Maybe you should be grateful instead of starting arguments. When I said she invaded my personal space, Jennifer jumped in with her preschool teacher voice, explaining that this was a shared living space and we all had to be considerate. She said my room was visible from the hallway and was bringing down the whole energy of the house. I pointed out that it was my room. My dad's jaw tightened. We all live here, and we all need to contribute to making it a pleasant environment. Jennifer stepped forward with a wounded look, saying she was just trying to make the place feel more like a home for everyone. She apologized if I felt she overstepped and suggested we could work together on a solution for the whole family. I told her I didn't want her help, and I wanted her to stay out of my room and stop moving my stuff. Watch your tongue, kid, my dad demanded. No, you people better mind your own business and stop acting like you run this place. Enough. You need to apologize to her now. I looked at Jennifer, who stood there with a perfect victim expression, waiting for me to fold. Then I looked at my dad, who clearly expected me to back down. No, I said. What did you just say? I said no. I'm not apologizing for being upset. My dad's face turned purple. He said I was being completely unreasonable, that Jennifer was trying to build a life here, and I was acting like a spoiled brat. Jennifer put a supportive hand on his arm and suggested we all take a step back and cool off. She was good at playing the peacemaker while my dad did her dirty work. I told them I was going to Ian's and walked out. When I got back that night, a note was on my door. It was titled House Rules for Respectful Cohabitation and listed expectations like 24-hour notice for guests, quiet hours from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m., and shared responsibility for common areas. The revelation. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday night, I was trying to write a paper. My dad had been home for 2 hours, and Jennifer already had him rearranging furniture because the flow wasn't right. They disappeared into his room for about an hour and then called me into the living room for a family meeting. I thought they were finally going to announce they were officially moving in together. I was wrong. Jennifer delivered the news like she had just been crowned Miss Universe. I'm pregnant. My dad was beaming, and Jennifer was glowing with smug satisfaction. Hunter and Paisley sat there as if they'd been coached. I just thought, well, there goes the neighborhood. I said, that's great. Congratulations. But Jennifer wasn't finished. She had a whole prepared speech delivered with fake sweetness and the entitlement of someone who thought she'd just won the property lottery. We've been talking about the future, she began, and I knew this wasn't going to be good. With the baby coming, we're going to need to make some major changes. More space, better organization, a proper nursery. So we were thinking maybe it's time for you to experience some independence. My dad chimed in with the confidence of a man who thinks he's in charge. Most people your age have moved out. It's time you took on some responsibility. You want me to move out? I asked. Jennifer had a rehearsed answer ready. I have a wonderful apartment in the city that I don't use anymore. I can rent it to you at a significant discount, way below market rate. When I asked how much, she said the market rate was $1,500, but she'd only charge me $1,200, a steal. And what about the house? Jennifer had great ideas for making it more functional for a growing family. The baby will need a nursery, and the kids need proper rooms. Your room would be the perfect nursery space. The room I had lived in since I was 12. And there's more, she continued. My mother has agreed to move in temporarily to help with the baby. She'll need the guest room. I looked at my dad, waiting for him to say something. He just sat there, nodding along. I decided to play along to see how far they'd go. That's interesting. I'll think about it. Jennifer's smile tightened. Great, but waiting too long would be limiting for everyone involved, so think fast. I immediately texted Ian about an emergency drink run. He showed up 20 minutes later and, after one look at my face, said, Dude, you look like someone just shat in your cereal. I told him everything. Classic, he said. Nothing says family values like kicking the owner out to make room for grandma. 2 weeks after the announcement, I came home to find Jennifer in my room with cardboard boxes, packing my stuff as if I'd already agreed to move out. Not just in the doorway, but in my room, going through my closet, wrapping my mom's pictures in newspaper, and boxing up books. When I asked what she was doing, she looked up with a bright smile. Hi, sweetie. I'm just helping you get started with packing. Your father and I decided it would be better to get you moved sooner rather than later. My father and I decided. Nobody asked me what I decided. She kept that sickeningly sweet tone. Well, honey, you've had 2 weeks to think about it. And what's there to think about? This is obviously the best solution for everyone. She held up a framed picture of my mom. Besides, some of this stuff probably needs to be updated anyway. You can't hold on to childhood things forever. Put that down and get out of my room now. Now, she said in that condescending preschool teacher voice. There's no need to be unpleasant. I'm trying to help you transition to adult living. This is exciting. When I repeated my demand, her mask finally dropped completely. Listen, little boy, she said, her voice sharp. I'm pregnant with your father's child. This house needs to work for a real family, not some overgrown teenager who can't handle growing up. You can pack your stuff like an adult, or your father can explain why this isn't negotiable. This isn't your house. You don't get to pack my stuff, I said. Actually, she said, picking up another box. Your father and I have discussed this extensively. We've already paid the deposit on the apartment, and you're moving out this weekend. The movers come Monday. They had hired movers without asking me. When I said they couldn't do this, she told me they already had. The lease is signed. The deposit is paid. And frankly, you should be grateful we're handling all the logistics. Most parents would make their children figure this out on their own. Then my dad walked in, and I could tell from his expression that this wasn't Jennifer acting alone. This was their plan. "Dad, what the hell is this?" I asked. "We decided it's better to just rip the Band-Aid off. You've been dragging your feet, so we made the decision for you." "You made it for me?" My dad used his patronizing tone. "Look, this is happening whether you like it or not. You can be mature about it or throw a tantrum, but either way, you're moving out this weekend." He said if I refused, they would pack my stuff and put it in storage. He said I was an adult now and needed to start acting like one. "This house is for families, not overgrown kids." Overgrown kids. My own father called me an overgrown kid for not wanting to be evicted from my own house. Jennifer added that I had until Sunday, as the cleaning lady needed to prepare the room for the nursery furniture. I pulled out my phone and started recording, asking them to repeat what they said about moving me out of my house. My dad's face turned red, and he told me to put the phone away, that this was a family discussion, not social media drama. I kept recording and asked him to clarify. "You're evicting me from this house, the house that belongs to me?" Jennifer snapped that it belonged to the family, and families make decisions together. She said I couldn't hold everyone hostage because of some paperwork technicality. Paperwork technicality? Property ownership was a paperwork technicality? Dad, whose name is on the deed? There was an awkward silence as my dad realized he had never checked the paperwork from when my grandpa died. When he finally admitted the house was legally in my name but started to say, "But," I cut him off. There was no but. Legally, it was my house, and he had just told me he was evicting me from my own property. That's when Jennifer finally understood. Her face went through about 6 emotions before settling on barely controlled panic. "That can't be right," she said slowly. "You're just a student." "This student does." I showed her the phone screen. "I inherited it from my grandparents. The house, the land, everything. It's all mine." Jennifer sat down hard on my bed, still holding a boxed-up book. "But your father, he pays for everything. Utilities, upkeep." "Yeah, on my property, like a tenant. He renovated this place with my mom's life insurance money to improve my house." The color drained from her face as she realized her plan had just imploded. "So, when you decided to evict me from my own house and turn my bedroom into your nursery without asking?" "Yeah, that's not gonna fly." My dad was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice had a dangerous edge. "Fine," he said. "It's your house. But you're still 21, and you're still my son, and you're going to do what I tell you to do." "Actually, no, I'm not," he said. "We'll see about that," and walked out. Jennifer stayed on my bed, staring at the boxes like they were evidence of a crime. She said this was insane, that this isn't how families work. "You're right," I said. "Families don't usually steal each other's houses." She looked up at me with pure hatred. "You have no idea what you've just done. I'm pregnant, and we need the house more than you do. Maybe you should have asked nicely." "This isn't over," she said. "Good luck with that," I replied. I immediately texted Ian about deploying the nuclear option. He responded instantly, asking how they took the news. "About as well as you'd expect," I told him. "Dad's having an alpha male meltdown, and Jennifer looks like she just watched her master plan burn to the ground." The aftermath. After the attempted eviction, I spent the weekend doing research, not homework. The kind of research that would help me make their lives as miserable as they tried to make mine. Ian came over Saturday morning with coffee and his laptop for war council time. "All right, what's the plan?" he asked. I told him the plan was to evict them both. "Even your dad?" he asked. "Especially my dad. He made his choice when he tried to force me out of my own house." Ian grinned. "Ruthless. I like it. What do you need?" We spent the morning researching tenant rights, eviction procedures, and property law. It turns out that when you let people establish residency, you have to follow proper legal channels to get them out. But when you own the property and they don't have a lease, you have most of the power. Ian found the relevant laws. In this state, a 30-day written notice is required for month-to-month tenants. Since they weren't paying rent and had no lease, it was considered tenancy at will, which can be terminated with notice. The fun part was that if they refused to leave, I could file for eviction and have them legally removed. Ian also found that I could sue for fair market rent for the entire time they had been living there without a lease, plus any damages. I did a quick calculation. My dad had been living there rent-free for 9 years, and Jennifer and her kids for about 6 months. We were talking about a serious amount of money. My dad would owe me about $200,000 in back rent, and Jennifer would owe about $15,000. Ian whistled. That's some expensive house playing. Monday morning, I filed the paperwork at the courthouse. Tuesday, I met with a lawyer to make sure I was doing everything by the book. Wednesday, I had the eviction notices printed on official letterhead. Thursday evening, I waited for them to both be home and called a family meeting. I set the folder of legal documents on the coffee table. We need to talk, I said. My dad was still in his superiority mode. If this is about your attitude problem, I don't want to hear it. You've been acting like a spoiled brat. Actually, this is about your housing situation. Jennifer, sitting next to him, put a hand on her belly as if protecting the baby from my bad vibes. What about our housing situation? I opened the folder and pulled out the notices. You're both being evicted. 30 days notice, effective immediately. The silence was beautiful. My dad picked up his notice and read it as if it were in Sumerian. What the hell is this? It's an eviction notice. You have 30 days to find alternative housing and vacate the premises. He exploded. You can't do this. I'm your father, you little, watch me. Jennifer screamed. That's illegal. You can't kick out a pregnant woman. Actually, I can. But we don't pay rent, she said, like it was a gotcha. Exactly, I said. You're tenants at will, which gives you even fewer rights than people with a lease. My dad stood up, and I saw the vein in his forehead, a sign he was about to lose it. He called this the most ungrateful and disrespectful thing I'd ever done after all he had sacrificed. He ranted about how he raised me and put money into the house, and now he could take care of his own housing like every other adult. Jennifer, meanwhile, was reading the notice again and found the part about back rent. She asked what it was. Owed compensation for unlawful occupancy. I explained. That's the lawsuit I'm filing for the rent you should have been paying. When my dad asked how much, I told him $200,000 for him and $15,000 for Jennifer and her kids. The color drained from their faces. You can't be serious, Jennifer whispered. Dead serious. I wasn't completely heartless, though. I told them they could avoid the lawsuit by vacating within 30 days and signing an agreement not to pursue any claims against the property. My dad sat back down hard. $200,000? He asked. Yeah, that's what it costs to live in a house like this for 9 years. Who knew? Jennifer's voice became shrill. This is insane. We're going to be homeless. I'm pregnant. Not my problem, I said. You should have thought about that before you tried to steal my house. My dad was quiet for a long time, staring at the notice. He finally asked where they were supposed to go. I suggested anywhere but here. Jennifer had that apartment, right? That's a one-bedroom, she said. We can't fit 3 adults and 2 kids in a one-bedroom. 3 adults? I asked. My father and her mother, she explained. I laughed. Oh, she thought her mother was still invited to this party? That's adorable. My dad said he had nowhere to go and all his money was tied up in this place. My place. And now he knew how it felt to be told he had to leave. Jennifer started to cry, the angry, frustrated sobs of someone whose manipulation had failed. She went on about how unfair this was, about building a life and being a family. But the baby, she wailed. The baby she got pregnant with to lock down my dad? That baby. Her crying stopped instantly, and the look she gave me was pure hatred. You don't know what you're talking about. Really? Let me guess. A birth control failure? A happy accident? A surprise pregnancy that just happened to occur when you needed to cement your position in the house. Silence. Ian showed up the next morning with donuts and a huge grin, asking how they took the notices. As well as you'd expect, I said. Lots of crying, threats, and disbelief that actions have consequences. Your dad too? He asked. My dad's having an existential crisis about owing me $200,000 in back rent. Beautiful, he said. Justice is a dish best served with legal paperwork. The next month was magnificent to watch. My dad tried everything. Lawyer consultations he couldn't afford, emotional manipulation, and even attempted bribes to get me to sign the house over and call it even. Newsflash, I already own the house. Jennifer went full scorched earth. She called my university, the police, and even tried to call CPS on herself, claiming I was creating an unsafe environment, which backfired when they pointed out she shouldn't have her kids living somewhere she felt unsafe. Finding housing for an unemployed pregnant woman, 2 kids, a 52-year-old man with mediocre credit, and potentially a grandmother on my dad's construction salary was harder than they thought. In week 4, my dad suggested they could pay me rent to stay. I said no. He started to argue, but I cut him off. Nope. You had a chance to treat me with respect. Instead, you tried to force me out of my own house. Actions have consequences. But I'm your father, he said. Yeah, and you're also the guy who tried to evict me from my own property to make room for your girlfriend's mother. Father of the Year material right there. That's when the real fireworks started. Jennifer filed a complaint claiming I was evicting her because of her pregnancy. The hearing was perfect. Jennifer had to explain to the judge that she was my dad's girlfriend, had lived there for 6 months, had no lease, and paid no rent. Then I got to tell the judge how they had tried to force me out of my own house. The judge basically told her, "You can't claim pregnancy discrimination when you're being evicted for trying to illegally evict the actual property owner." Case dismissed. But the real bomb came in week 5. You won't believe this. I was at Ian's place when my dad called, and his voice was shaky. "We need to talk," he said. "About what?" "You've got 3 days left to move out." "About the baby." Something in his tone made me pay attention. "What about it?" "Can you come home? I need to show you something." I found him at the kitchen table with a stack of papers. He looked 10 years older. He slid a paper across the table. It was paternity test results. "The baby isn't mine," he said quietly. I stared at the paper. Jennifer had been lying this whole time. He found out because she wanted him to get better health insurance for the pregnancy. The company required blood work, and the genetic screening showed he couldn't be the father, wrong blood type. So whose baby is it? Her ex-husband's. They were still sleeping together when she started dating me. The whole thing was a setup. Where is she now? Upstairs. I confronted her this morning. She tried to say the test was wrong. Jennifer's attempts at justifying her actions continued. She insisted it didn't matter because he would be a better father than her ex, and when that failed, she accused him of abandoning her and the baby. She called him a heartless bastard, asking how he could be so cruel to a pregnant woman. Then, in one final act of desperation, she blamed me for everything, calling me selfish for not wanting a real family. I almost laughed. Even when caught in a blatant lie, she was still trying to pin the blame on me. "So what happens now?" I asked my dad after Jennifer's tirade. He was quiet for a long moment. "I messed up bad," he said. "I chose a woman I barely knew over my own son. I tried to kick you out of your own house for someone who was lying to me from day one." "Yeah, you did," I replied. "I know you probably hate me right now, and you have every right to, but I'm hoping maybe we could work something out. I don't have anywhere to go, and I know I don't deserve any help from you. But, no." The word hung in the air. "You made your choice," I continued. "You chose her over me. You tried to force me out of my own house. You called me ungrateful and disrespectful for not wanting to be homeless. You don't get to come crawling back now that your gold-digging girlfriend turned out to be exactly what everyone except you could see she was." "But I'm your father," he said, pleading. "Yeah, and I'm your son," I shot back. "Didn't stop you from trying to evict me." My dad looked down at the paternity test results. He said he knew he messed up and didn't deserve forgiveness, but he was asking anyway. I told him I'd tell him exactly what I thought. "I think you're a 52-year-old man who got manipulated by a 30-year-old con artist because you were thinking with your dick instead of your brain. I think you were so desperate to feel young and needed that you ignored every red flag. And I think when push came to shove, you chose her over your own son. Now that it's all blown up in your face, you want me to forget that you tried to steal my inheritance and kick me out of my own house." He flinched, as if I had slapped him. "It wasn't like that," he started to say, but I cut him off. "It was exactly like that. You just got caught." My dad was quiet for a long time. "So what happens now?" he asked. "Now you move out," as we agreed. That night, Jennifer left. There was no big scene or dramatic goodbye. She just packed her stuff and disappeared with her kids. My dad moved out 2 days later, renting a 1-bedroom apartment across town. He took only his personal things, leaving behind all the furniture he had bought and every improvement he had made to a house that was never his. Ian came over the day after my dad left with pizza and drinks. He asked if I'd ever forgive him. "Maybe," I said, "but not today, and not because he got caught being an idiot." "Fair enough," he said. "So what's the plan now?" "Finish school, enjoy living in my own house without anyone trying to steal it, and maybe get a dog." Ian smiled. "Sounds like a plan."